Okay, everyone, I think we can start, and whoever else is still entering, then just find a free slot and be quiet. Welcome everyone to this panel. It is named Two to Tango, and we are about to take a close look at the relationship of independent investigative teams and legacy media. That's the title, and the people who will fill it with life are to my right. And it's Cecilia Anesi of IRP Media. You'll see in the back. It is Nicholas Leontopoulos from Reporters United Greece, and Bastian Obermeier from Paper Trail Media. And all the three of them have very different reasons and history, but have all decided to, what I'd call, go independent at some point in time. I am Elisa Simantke. I'm the editorial director and co-founder of Investigate Europe. And while I share partly a fate with the three of them, I'm today only here to moderate and otherwise shut up. So I would like to give the floor first to Cecilia, and maybe you can just tell us a bit about, because we are, in your case, I think we are talking about a two-step founding. So IRP Media is already around since 2012. So you're the contrary. You know, IRP is already around since 2012, and IRP Media is younger. So you're the oldest one of us. You're from 2012. We are from 2016. Then we have 2019 here, and a very fresh face from 2022 with Paper Trail Media. So maybe you will tell us a bit about the founding of IRP first, and how you approach this whole collaboration part, and maybe we'll come to IRP Media after that.
Sure. I'll try to keep a long story short. So in 2012, with other colleagues, we had gathered at the Global Investigative Journalism Conference. At the time, it was in Kiev that year. Quite a different Kiev, I guess. And we have figured at one point during the conference that all of us had a common aspect. We were all freelancers, Italian freelancers. Most of us quite young and inexperienced, but you would see that the majority of the colleagues that were at the conference and were talking about, at least, I think it was about 300 or more people, were staff reporters from, well-established media or also independent media, but they were sent by the media in representation in that conference. And what we had in the Italian situation was what we would call pocos, locos, or maliunidos. So we figured that we were quite inspired by experiences like OCCRP that had already a few years of experience, but also other realities like, we were looking up at ICIJ, ProPublica, and a lot of other international non-profit centers that were coming by. And we thought, well, there is something wrong, because how comes we're just freelancers from Italy here, and there is no structure, no funding, no support whatsoever. So when we got back to Italy, we didn't actually know each other that well, apart from Giulia Rubino and myself already worked together, but with the others, really, we had just met at a conference. And it was a very risky decision to take, to fund a center for investigative reporting between people that actually only had one thing in common, that was wanting to promote, support, and produce investigative reporting in Italy and beyond. So that's how IRP was born, and then it had a lot of, it evolved in a lot of different ways. Not all the funders are still part of IRP, but what happened, though, is that we're still existing, and not only we're still existing, but we also managed to really build something that initially was just a crazy dream, and it was to have a center for investigative reporting in a country like Italy that was lacking that space. It's still lacks that space in mainstream media. And again, if we also look at funding, it still totally lacks support. What we have become, it's not only a center for investigative reporting, and I don't want to spoil too much about IRPI Media, but we can say that today we're a newsroom also for freelancers. We are behaving as a desk for a lot of investigative reporters from this country and beyond that decide to report on international stories with an Italian angle or international stories that have some Italian people involved. And a lot of these freelancers were left alone, and we are gladly giving them a home. It was not decided, it just happened, and I think it's one of the most impressive and also, well, challenging, of course, but also really heart-filling things that we were doing.
Thank you very much. I'll come back to you later to ask like why you and how you decided to take on the next step from IRPI to also become your own newsroom, as you put it. But let's go through this round first, and next is Nicholas on maybe your reasons to fund Reporters United, and tell us also a bit about who you are, as not many people in this room will be able to read the intro of the Greek side, but I still find it nice.
We went with the Greek version and not the English version because it's more exotic, I think. English you could understand, now you can't, so there's a lot to imagine. I mean, we were founded, always mix the two things, as a legal entity in 2019, and then we went online in 2020. And we wanted to create a network, which means that the people who were, and we are still trying to create a network, we consisted of people who had very different backgrounds in journalism. You had people from mainstream media, you had people that are freelancers, you had people that were very young or very old, and also we created something that has become almost impossible in journalism, to politically not to be a little bit diverse. But the why, I think for me this is the most interesting part, why we did it, why we tried to do it. So there basically are two reasons, and actually both reasons are also our ambitions, what we are trying to accomplish. And I think they are interesting for the talk today because both reasons are also antagonizing with legacy media. One was that we could see that there is a huge problem of independence in the media in Greece, legacy media being too tied, too close to political interests and to business interests and to partisan. I would add now in hindsight, because this is something that you could not understand back then, that this has also become a real problem. In my view, I would call it the elephant in the newsroom. Independence has also become a huge problem in Western investigative journalism, in the sense that you have more and more state money going into independent investigative journalism from the states themselves or from foreign states, embassies, ministries, and all that. One was independence, and the second, which was a mix, was to try to do the difficult stories, the stories that legacy media would not be interested in doing, either because they thought they are too boring. Sometimes we talk about structural stories that they think they are boring and they don't have a scoop, so why should somebody do it? And we have good examples with that. A year ago, actually, together, we, on a consortium with many media, we did a story on the structural problems of train systems in Europe. Back then, it was a boring topic. 1 year later, we had a terrible train crash in Greece. So, in one way, it shows why boring stories can also be important. But the second kind of stories that are difficult are, of course, the stories that legacy media do not want to do because for the same reason I explained in the first place. Too close to a government, too close to a political party, too close. I don't like the word oligarchs that we use a lot about South Europe and Eastern Europe, but let's say too close to business group. And this is what we could do and the others couldn't do. It's like this 5% of news coverage, maybe it's not even 5, it's 2%. They might do an excellent work in everything else, but there is this desert in the landscape that they don't want to cover, and this is why we thought we might be relevant.
Okay, I'll also come back to you later in asking what kind of, balance you have to seek between exposure and security when you decide to publish stories also on your own or with a partner. But let's first come to Bastian, who, because I think we have a quite diverse mix of organizations and of reasons and also of ways who and how to partner, but I think a few combining elements, and maybe after your presentation you can also just jump right into that decision is, or the discussion that we want to have today is like, okay, if you decide to partner with those, how can you make sure that this is a win-win and then, an on-eyesight kind of collaboration? But start with your reasons first.
Yeah, so I feel nearly guilty because we didn't have those big problems. We just needed a new challenge after 20 years at Süddeutsche Zeitung, Frederik Ohrmeyer and me, with whom I'm working for 10 or 12 years now. And we were actually looking for more freedom, so we wanted to take our own decisions on which topic we want to investigate, with whom we want to work, the people we want to hire, and so we thought it's probably a crazy idea, but let's just try and set up our own company. And then we went to Der Spiegel in Germany and we asked them, would you want to work with us? And they had asked us a number of times before, but before they wanted to hire us. And we said, we would like to work with you, but we don't want to get hired. We want to form our own company and work with you, with our company. And they thought, we are crazy, but why not try it? And so that's what we did. We founded Paper Trail Media a year and a couple of days ago now. So it's not, it's not years there, and we are not sure how long we're going to be there. But it's huge fun, and it's so the most important thing and the biggest luxury for us is that we can decide how we want to work. Actually, that we have a certain idea how we want to tackle problems and how we want to investigate, and then we can decide: do we want to make a book? Do we want to make a podcast? Do we want to write pieces? Do we want to try to do a documentary or whatever? And we can make that decision. We don't have to ask anyone else. We don't have a boss. We have partners. We have Der Spiegel. And after 6 months, we also partnered with public broadcaster ZDF in Germany. So we have 2 really big partners. This is really mainstream as mainstream comes. So we're not doing the small stories on the sites because they would probably not publish it. But we have a lot of firepower for the stories that we identify as being the most important. And that's what we do, and there are, of course, always problems, but until now it's been big fun.
So you, of course, had also the, let's say the advantage of already have a huge reputation and 2 names that, were already known. So you came also into that partnership with, I'd say, with some weight. But how do you experience, or how do you think about Paper Trail Media as an organization? Because of course the 2 of you are very known, you now have known partners. How important is it for you that Paper Trail Media gets a certain credit in this whole, let's say, tango situation?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because we are not in it for the credit for Paper Trail Media, because we want to get the best and the most attention for the stories. And so if Der Spiegel, they don't even publish the name Paper Trail Media. They publish our story and put us and our reporters in the byline. ZDF names Paper Trail Media as one of their partners when they do a story with us. Der Standard, now in Austria, with whom we're also working, they really proudly put in the piece itself with our Paper Trail partners and then put us in the byline. So it's very diverse, and we are fine with whatever they want to do as long as they give us as much publication, storage place, whatever as possible. So we want to identify the best stories, and then we want to get the most exposure for it. And what we don't want to do anymore, and that's one of the reasons, so the biggest reason why we left Süddeutsche Zeitung is that we needed a new adventure. We needed a new challenge. We did everything with Süddeutsche. They're a fantastic team. It's really a good place, a fantastic place for investigative journalism, but we wanted to try something new, and that's what we can do now, and it's fun.
And then last question, and then I go on to the others. It's also, I read a recent interview with you where you said, and it's also, you're a for profit compared to a lot of the investigative teams being non-profit, and it's also you're kind of willing to prove the point that this is possible. So I read it.
Yeah.
Like when you look at the different parts of the chain of your product.
Yeah, so in the beginning, we were speaking with people from OCCRP, for example, and we were thinking of making a center in Germany, and we could have done that, but somehow we thought we want to take our journalism and make it work in a sense that we actually earning money, hiring people, and not being dependent on big organizations who give us money. Not saying that's a bad thing, that's a really fantastic thing. That's how ICHA and many others are working, and it's really important. But we thought we are now, through luck and through the work of the last years, in the unique situation in Germany that we can demand that, and people could be so crazy to do it, and they were, and we'll see how that goes actually. But so what we said is we want to try if that's a model that, so no one has all our rights. Der Spiegel has the right that we offer them the stories for their magazine and for their website in German. So we could sell the same story in English. We can do a documentary, and the Spiegel doesn't have any rights for that. We can do an audio. We can do one investigation that's being financed by ZDF and Der Spiegel, and we can pay our people. We hired 10 reporters meanwhile, which is really crazy because they are just fully paid by us. And then if we then do on the side a podcast, then we have more money for our company. We can hire more reporters, and we can do even more stories, and we'll see where that ends. But the idea, so in our heads, this is really working. The problem is we don't have enough time to do all that we could do in the moment, right? That's.
Okay, we might come back to that, but to go back to Cecilia, because I think it's now also a good moment maybe to look at ERP Media and how it came about. For the presentation, we either have now to change each time, but maybe it's good for last time to show ERP Media, because it's the website which is the most of the three of us like an outlet. But maybe you can tell us a bit, like, okay, how did you work first with media partners at ERP, and how did then ERP Media evolve out of this?
So yeah, when we were looking at options, we wish a model like Bastian and Fred would work in the context in which we operate, which is mainly Italy, in terms of obviously we were so we could not publish when we were ERP on a website, because in Italy you need to be a registered media with a court. So what we did is we were pitching stories to different type of media, either in our country or abroad, and both. But the problem was that if, and it was a big if, you would manage to get a space and be published, then the amount of money that you will make was really, really little. And which meant that in order to produce that investigation, we had to go out there and look for money, which meant trying to win grants And the situation brought us to do fundraising, to try and get core funding to actually manage and have a structure that could produce that investigations. Basically, we were covering the cost while mainstream media were publishing it by benefiting getting an investigation out, which did work for a few years. But at one point, it did not make sense. First of all, because we were overwhelmed by work. Second of all, because none of us could be full-time in terms of more than anything, not just money-wise, but I mean, mentally speaking, you cannot focus on like a million different things. We're still doing a million different things, but within a framework and within a project. So you're focused, reporters are less stressed, they're followed, there is a desk, there is security, there is a lot of things that you can think within a structure. And it's more than anything, there is a mission, like there is a vision that you're following. We did lack all of that, so at one point we decided that we either, o la va o la spacca, like we either make it or break it, and we decided to open our own media. We came up with this not very sexy name, IRPI Media, but we decided that we didn't want to lose the only brand that we had. It was IRPI, that stands for Investigative Reporting Project Italy, and we added media, which is pretty much what you guys did as well. We got this media word to it. Well, it was really bad timing because we launched it, we prepared for about a year, and then we launched it right when the lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown started, March 2020. Good time. They tell you like, oh, you should, do all these live events to present your new project and all of that, cancelled. But again, to keep a long story short, now it's 3 years old. And I think when we launched it, we thought, yeah, it was a little crazy. But we can probably say that it went way better than we expected, also and especially in terms of response from the public. We are in a country that doesn't have a lot of readers, like Italians, if you compare it to the rest of Europe, doesn't read a lot. So the numbers that we're having today, if you compare it to mainstream media, is actually pretty high. We can do way better for sure, but I think what we're seeing here is that there was actually some need for investigations. People do want to read, and we have a type of publications that is trying to do something that, I mean, we don't want to offend anybody, of course, and we do read mainstream media, but one of the big problems is that readers are left alone in trying to understand really complex issues. So what we're trying to do, and you see a lot of that with series, the red writing up there, the big wall means that's a series with a hashtag. And when you do open a series, if you want to click on that just as an example, is that you will find a number of articles that take the reader into not just one story, but a whole issue and a whole context. And the idea is that this way we're going to guide the reader into, again, complex issues, or even not just complex, but stories that have some follow-ups. So it's a bit like what we're trying to do, each of us, when we watch Netflix or Amazon Prime, you do want to follow a story. We do the same with judicial investigations, with projects. Specifically, this is a project on migration in the Mediterranean Sea. And, well, we are going to have a new website at one point, hopefully soon. We're working on that. And it's a project that strengthened this idea of helping the reader going through content in a different way than just reading news on a mainstream media. And it's not entertainment, but we do think that because investigative reporting can be complex, can be boring in a way, what we're trying to do is to accustom and to kind of give to Italian readership something that has been missing for a long time. Now, we might not do it perfect, but it's also with readers' help that we're trying to shape it in a way that we cover certain issues that are of interest, and that we want, at one point, maybe in the future, can also be supported by readers, because here we come to the big challenge, is that we have been following a non-profit model for many years, but of course you're always in risk of having one donor or another donor that steps down, and then what happens? And because we do have the responsibility of reporters, producing investigations for us, of course, you do have to think about what happens. So again, we have the challenge here of having to deal with the Italian market that is not very accustomed to, do like a membership or this kind of things. But we are going to explore a lot of different things. So far, so good. And of course, the key to all of this, though, and I must say, is the international collaborations. Like, we are all different experiences, but if we wouldn't be collaborating among us, we will not do anything new.
Yes, so just because, of course, the whole financial part, it's also filling own panels. So, but so that I just can ask once again about the way you publish. So you're now in this international collaborations, but you publish exclusively on your own website, or you still?
Mainly, we do in certain occasions. There's been some stories that we have shared with some Italian media, but it's a rare occasion, let's say, because at the moment we're competitors. And we do, though, collaborate a lot with local media, like very local newsrooms, especially in the south of Italy, but not only. And we do bridge a lot, so with either investigative reporting centers from, for example, Indip from Sardinia, or media like Il Dispaccio in Reggio Calabria, but also, and most especially, we collaborate in international partnership that might be with another center, like Reporters United, or with a media, that might be a Boston independent project, or it might be also like a large newsroom like, I don't know, El País or whatever. We are, though, part of a structure network as well, that is OCCRP, and by now we're part of different collaborations that are ongoing projects, such as, I'm just quoting one, like Russian Asset Tracker, and other projects that are, for months or years, are basically a melting pot of experiences and knowledge exchange and different collaborations between newsrooms from all over the world.
Okay, thanks. Maybe speaking about a mix of own publications and publications with media, that's also something to come back to Reporters United, because while you're not officially your own media, you've sometimes decided to go, completely alone with a story, and very often you are also collaborating. So maybe you can tell us a bit, Nicholas, like what's the pros and cons of having a partner in, especially publications like the ones you're having. I mean, we're talking about reporting on, as you said, Russian tracker, Italian mafia, spy scandal, so it's not the easy-go-lucky kind of stories you're...
Yes, well, basically it's a very contradictory relationship, because sometimes we think it's best, I mean, we are using them and they're using us. This is the bottom line. But it's a very difficult relationship because, for example, you need their exposure. We have the example of the spyware story in Greece. I mean, this became a huge political scandal in Greece. News outlets from the outside are calling it the Greek Watergate and everything. We were publishing alone for 8 months. There were only 2 very minor outlets, very small Lilliputian outlets in Greece, us, Reporters United and Inside Story, publishing and revealing real scoops on the spyware and on the government and everything, and there was total silence. So it made sense that at one point we publish the big political stories, our big political stories that were involving directly the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office, we published with one big news outlet. So we did want the exposure. At the same time, we were afraid of partisanship, because this is a very good newspaper, but at the same time, they are seen by the public as too close to the opposition. And this is something we want to break. Then the same thing goes with other risks. It was good for us to publish with them because we had more legal cover, and actually we're lucky. We published one story, very important story for our caliber, in August 5, 2022. There's a huge political scandal. A very powerful figure in Greek politics has to resign the next day, and on the same day he's suing us for 500,000 euros, which became the biggest slap lawsuit in Europe during 2022. if we weren't publishing together with the big newspaper, we would be much more vulnerable. In Greece, if you run a non-profit as we do, all the members of the non-profit are liable to everything that they own. So we could even be destroyed. So it makes sense to partner with them. It becomes a problem because I think this is the case in Greece. I don't want to speak for other countries, but maybe it's similar. Partly the problem with journalism nowadays is also legacy media. So the problem is, do you do stories also on them? Do you do stories on big mainstream media and their ties to businessmen, to the government and so on? Or do you self-censor yourself and you say you can't bite the hand that bites you? Also for us, our business model is that we sell everything we give to them. We never publish for free. Even if the fee is very low, we always sell. So that's a tough one. And what can you do? We try to be a little bit bold and challenging and do stories for other media, but it's a real issue.
Okay, so to reward those of you who have not left early to go to another panel, I mean, we've been offered that we can go until 5 because we started late. I don't want to hold anyone hostage, but if we use these last 10 minutes that we have been granted extra with those of you who would like to stay and ask questions, I'd be very happy to give the floor to you. So if those who would like to leave, leave, and the rest just stays and asks questions, we might get the right balance of you being able to participate in this discussion. Because I also hope, I mean, that was the whole idea also of this panel, is that we can inspire, though I know it's always difficult to compare yourself to already existing media and big names and organizations, so it always feels far away, but maybe there are a few of you who have this thought of go independent or are interested in working in an organization like ours, though we all fight the same struggles. So please feel very free to ask questions. Is there anyone? Yes, please, first row. I think there's also a microphone, so just wait for 1 second, though it's not super loud here, but always better.
I have a question for you, sir. You reported on some pretty heavy stuff, and as an independent journalist, how do you handle that? Is there any pushback? Do you feel like that you don't have the cover of an organization? Is it harder? I don't know if you could speak on that a little bit.
So the question is two?
Question.
Okay, thanks.
Well, actually, when we approached Der Spiegel, our first question was how would we deal with legal risks? Because we thought, so if we have our own company and we get a slap suit and we're going to get sued in London or wherever, we're done, that's it. And Der Spiegel said, we are very proud to defend everything you do in court, and we don't need to have any financial talk about that. That's just a given, and that's a huge luxury. So we have all the problems that everyone's got who is doing investigative work in the international sphere. So we have to be very careful, and one big mistake is the end of your outlet. But that's something we share. But I don't know if so we didn't take as many risks as my colleagues, because before we jumped, we asked the big legal thing questions, and they promised to take everything there. So, we don't feel that we are very brave for something like that, because we knew that before we started.
Okay, thanks. Could you maybe have no conversations in this time? Because we can hear you better in the front than you can imagine, and it's also not so good for the recording, so please. But if there are any more questions, I'm very happy to take them. Otherwise, I would also pass on this question that you just asked to Tilia, because I think in your case, I mean, you're reporting on the mafia and you're doing it on your own terms. So, and we know that nowadays the mafia might not always threaten you directly, but they're very good in suing. So how do you deal with this risk?
Well, IRP Media doesn't only report on the mafia, we report on a lot of different issues. And actually, we do get sued a lot. So far, not mainly from the mafia. Especially, we do get sued a lot, especially when we report about environmental crimes or financial stories. Well, we do have that problem a lot. We were asked for damages. We keep being asked for damages lately. Our reporters are sued a lot also in criminal court because in Italy defamation is still a crime. The way we found so far to protect ourselves, it's obviously through hiring a lawyer. We cannot go pro bono in such a situation, of course. And so we have a legal department. The way it works is that this lawyer checks the stories prior to publication, at least those that are more risky, and then he follows up on anything that happens. Right now, we get about 2 requests per, well, 2 to 6 requests per week to the index or cancel stories based on new privacy law. And adding to that, we have a lot of other kind of legal threats. The situation is that in Italy, you can be insured as a private reporter, like as an individual, and of course the costs are on us as individuals, as freelancers. And then there is no insurance for the media. This is something that OCCRP is looking at for a lot of different member centers like we are, because it's a huge problem, because in case you do lose a suit, and we know of other media, like smaller media in our country, especially from exposed territories like Calabria, Sicily, who are starting to lose this kind of suits. And if you're condemned to pay 60,000 euros and you're a small media, you close doors. The problem, and I think we should push for some activism here that we shouldn't do, but somebody else should for us and a lot of others, is that unfortunately it's super easy to slap and nothing happens. In case a judge finds that the reporter was right, the slapper will still get away with it without, in most cases, without even paying the legal expenses that the media or the reporter had, let alone the psychological pressure and the time that you lose to defend yourself, even just to write a defense memory with a lawyer, which is something that our reporters usually end up working at night because it's the only time they have. So I'm not talking here only about IRP Media. It's a very common situation. Of course, if you're La Repubblica, you have a different situation, different legal team, and it is a problem that is increasing in Europe as well, for sure. So what we do is hopefully we're not gonna, like, the pressure is not gonna become too much, and thankfully there is a lot of, there is some attention at the moment, for example, from the Case Coalition to try and get a better EU law, but at the moment things aren't looking bright. I must be honest about that.
Okay, thanks. Is there any more questions in the room? Yes, please. There is the microphone. So first you and then second row.
Right.
Yes, please.
Thanks for sharing your knowledge and insights. A question for Mr. Obermeier. I was wondering, you say you can do this for profit. How? And what is your revenue made of? Thanks.
So we are for profit in a sense that we went to the Spiegel and ZDF and we asked them that, so our idea was we do our investigations and then we give you the exclusive right to publish what we found for ZDF in TV, for the Spiegel in print and online in German. And for that they pay us monthly sums of money, which we can then use to pay our reporters. So we're not selling stories, we're selling us working for them in a way which is fine as long as they are fine, but which also brings us in the situation, of course, that the moment those two media say, okay, we're canceling now our cooperation, we probably have to say goodbye to most of our reporters or find other partners or whatever. So we are heavily dependent on those two big media, but on the other side, they give us the chance to hire as many reporters and to do the work we want to do.
Okay, we are told to finish, so 10 seconds each. What's your advice if someone thinks these days about going independent? Just like this. You told me you don't like surprises, so I spared this for you for the end.
10 seconds?
Yes, 10 seconds.
But there was a question from...
Yeah, but we are not allowed to take any longer, I've been informed.
Well, for me, there is a path for independent media and a real path for independent journalists, but it's very narrow and it's very risky and it's very steep, but for me it's the only path. And actually it's the only path also that is sustainable even from a business point of view, because I think if you do those things, if you prove that you are independent and you do the difficult stories, then you do become relevant to the public, and then the public will be paying for what you do. So for me, this is the only way.
Perfect. Cecilia, please.
I think that we all love the stories we do, and we would not give up for anything. Like, the big problem is that we decided to go independent, and we always been independent since 2012, basically, because we wanted to do these stories and this type of journalism. If we have to quit this journalism, we will go for something different, like opening a restaurant, perhaps. So for us, there is no other way than being independent.
Okay.
So it's big fun. I would advise it.
Yes, your tip.
I would advise to find strong partners, and most important, only do what you're really burning for, only do what you really love to do, because you have to do it from your own motivation, and don't let your private life go, because if you do that, you're gonna break down in maybe in 1 year, maybe in 2 years. But if there's no balance, it's gonna ruin you, everyone.
Okay, then this is exactly what we advise all of you to do. Get out, have a life, and enjoy. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.